Let's be heard in a program dedicated to the free and open exchange of ideas and of opinions in the belief that as American citizens you have a right to hear and to be heard. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sitting in booth 552, midway up in the Houston Astrodome, looking out on a sea of red carpeting, red, white, and blue bunting, and red seats waiting, ready for tonight. There have been no sessions today, but there will be a session tonight in which there will be nominations made, and of course that is what conventions do, even though we know who the nominees are going to be. And I have had the good fortune this morning of walking around the convention hall and buttonholing, literally, Jack Kemp, who's in the eye of the storm of many news reports, Lynn Martin, who will make the nomination speech for President George Bush. As a matter of fact, let me tell you about Lynn Martin. What a wonderful woman she is. What a good sport she is. She was very busy going from interview to interview, CNN, Ted Koppel, and all of that. And I had followed her with my microphone, but she just didn't have time. So you know what she did? She agreed to let me interview her while the person was putting up makeup on her. I interviewed her while she was being made up. You'll hear that later. We also talked to many other people who we will share with you. As a matter of fact, a lot of C-SPAN fans out there who watch C-SPAN and call the Bob Grant program had a very interesting, illuminating chat with Brian Lamb, who is the director of C-SPAN. Many people that we talked to, and I want you to hear each and every one of the conversations we had. We're going to be joined in just a little while by senatorial candidate Alan Keyes of Maryland, who made a stirring address the other day, really rocked the joint. He spoke on the 17th and had a dynamic speech to make, and he is really a charismatic figure if there ever was one. He's running for the Senate in Maryland. We're going to be talking to Alan Keyes a little later. Perhaps the most interesting person out on the campaign floor, on the convention floor, was a gentleman who was dressed like Uncle Sam. And Alan Keyes, who has just joined us, I want you to listen to a couple of songs that Uncle Sam has. You could put those earphones on so you could hear them. A couple of songs that Uncle Sam has, which I think will be good for your Republican heart. At any rate, if we're ready, here is, I believe his name is Stanton, and he is really Uncle Sam and has a couple of songs. Well, lo and behold, here is Uncle Sam himself.
I'm sorry, but I'm actually the son of Uncle Sam. From, of course, where else would I be from? Washington, D.C.
You really are from Washington, D.C.?
That's right, sir.
And what are you doing with that Uncle Sam suit on?
Well, you know, I thought that I'd breathe a little life into it. If I didn't have fun, then nobody was going to have fun here today.
Having any trouble getting in this convention hall, which is under tight security?
Not myself, but the metal parts on the banjo gave me a little bit of a problem. So they just took it apart and asked me if I could really play it, and I strolled up, jigged a little jig, and did a few kicks, and they believed me.
What did you play?
Well, I did a fine Republican marching song.
A Republican marching song. All right, let's hear a Republican marching song.
My money lies over the ocean, 'cause everything's made overseas. We get a new Congress in motion. We'll bring back my money to me. And we get everybody singing, bring back, oh, bring back my money to me, to me. Thank you, man. Bring back, oh, bring back my money to me.
That's good. You know, that's the most fun I've had since I've come down here. Now, you have vote, what does that say up there?
Vote to Kill. It's a new book out that's a very powerful Republican document, and probably one of the best things they have going for them. And what it talks about is the vote to kill the old ideas in Congress, get a new Congress in there, get a new attitude.
Well, I like your attitude. You have the right attitude, and I hope that we see more of you floating around this convention hall. We need people like you here.
Well, thank you very much. And when you see me, you'll see people jigging in my wake.
All right. By the way, let's get this gentleman's name.
I'm Jack Stanton.
What do you do for a living, Jack? All right, Jack Stanton, I understand you have another song that's floating around rather underground here at the convention. What about that song? Is there such a song?
Well, let's put it like this. If I had my way, they'd have it up on the screen, up on the main stage, and you'd be following the bouncing elephant. Democrat. November come and we send them all home. Democrat. November come and we send them all home. They tax, they spend, and they promise me honey. November come and we send them all home. When they get elected, they take all my money. November come and we send them all home. My paychecks shrink every time they vote. November come and we send them all home. This Congress gonna sink my banana boat. November come and we send them all. Come on, you gotta help me sing it. Demo, everybody. November come and we send them all home. Democrat. November come and we send them all home.
All right, I hope you don't mind sharing those two political ditties. Alan Keyes seemed to enjoy it. We'll find out a few other things about what's going on with Alan Keyes in just a moment when we introduce him to you as our first guest this afternoon, live and direct from the Houston Astrodome, site of the 1992 Republican National Convention. United States Senate from the state of Maryland. He served in the Ronald Reagan administration as Assistant Secretary of State for International Affairs.
International organizations, yeah.
And you made a great speech the other day. As a matter of fact, a lot of people had been milling about, and suddenly I noticed people stopped, they looked up, and they listened. I hope you're out there on the hustings. If you campaign like that in Maryland, you've got to beat that woman who looks as though she's sucking on a sour lemon all the time.
Well, we're campaigning hard and working hard, and things have been coming together well. Maryland, as you know, is a tough state. We're outnumbered by the Democrats now about 2.5 to 1. We've improved. In the 1980s, it was, at the beginning of the 80s, it was 4.3 to 1, and it's now fallen to 2.5 to 1. We won the presidential races in 84 and 88. We did very well in the 1990 legislative races, picking up seats and so forth. So things are coming our way, and this, of course, is the year of the challenger, the year when folks are looking twice at all the incumbents and asking some tough questions about the performance of this Congress. So I think our shot is very good this time.
Well, of course, I have to mention the fact that we've talked to some other people running for office, and they are concerned about the top of the ticket. You have to be concerned. There's a rule of thumb that says if he doesn't get at least 47% of the vote, that sinks your chances no matter what else is going on. How about the top of the ticket?
Well, I think that President Bush has a good chance of coming back, and I think he started well in the first day that he got into the convention here. He really needs to redefine the issue of change so that the focus is on the Congress, where I think it belongs. And if he does that successfully, he's not only, of course, going to help himself, but obviously he's going to help people to understand the importance of the votes that they're casting down the line for senator and congressman. I also think, though, that the traditional wisdom about the connection between the two levels may not be so true this time, because there's such a strong anti-incumbent feeling out there that it makes this year, I think, potentially at least different from a lot of years past, at least from what the pollsters appear to be saying these days.
Now, a lot of people have asked me what I thought about the president's chances, and these are individuals who I would think would have a better sense. But I think people are asking each other this question because they are reading the same thing I'm reading, and that is that people want to vote for George Bush. They're actually, I just got through reading prior to going on the air, people said they want a reason to vote for him. Now, you've touched on that reason when you talked about redefining.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the importance of redefining the issue so that you see the Congress as the obstacle to what I think is the fundamental shift we need to have in this country. The congressional majority and the Bill Clinton Democratic approach really represents a shift of power further and further toward Washington, the big bureaucracies, the big government approaches, higher taxes, more spending on programs that haven't produced results. From the welfare program on over, what you've seen is a lot of expansion of government power, but not much expansion of results for the people. And I think that George Bush needs to redefine the issue so people will focus on that problem and ask themselves, who has the approaches that are actually representing power being put back in the hands of the people? And I think the motto we used over at Citizens Against Government Waste when I was there 2 years ago for Taxpayer Action Day was take back your power. And I think that that's what needs to be done here. The people around the country have to realize that in the course of the 20th century, we have put too much power in the hands of the central government. It needs to be brought back within reach of people at the grassroots, in the neighborhoods, in the cities, the towns, the localities, and also, of course, in the private sector, where people can make their own decisions about how they're going to make use of these resources, and where the best energies of our people can be applied to the problems we face. They're not going to be solved from Washington.
I believe it was October 19th of 1990 that you had the Tax Action Day. We broadcast live and direct from your headquarters, Citizens Against Government Waste. And we talked with you. We have talked with J. Peter Grace. We come up with billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars that are being wasted. Everybody talks about that waste. Nobody does anything about it. The question in my mind and a lot of citizens' minds is, why? Why don't they do anything about it?
Well, you see, I think that there's a lot of resistance because the people who are within that insider establishment actually benefit from government spending, no matter if it's wasted or not. Because they're the ones who get to decide how it's spent, who's going to benefit, who gets the patronage. They're also the folks who preside over the expansion of the bureaucracy and whose power is increased whenever you get that expansion, if they happen to be on the inside. So I think there's a fundamental distinction now between the insiders and the outsiders. And what we really need to see during this election year is have people out there who are footing the bill begin to think about the fact that there's a different interest at work when you're inside the government than when you're paying the bills, and they've got to begin to vote their own interests because that's going to produce the change. What we need right now is a change of personnel, sending some people in there who are explicitly committed to the kinds of reforms and restoration of grassroots power that will really make a difference for taxpayer. Because the usual promises and the usual, well, I'm a good guy, I'll go in and use government power to do this for you and that for you. I mean, who are we kidding? They've promised that so many times, they can't deliver on that promise. And we should stop believing the people, including Bill Clinton, who get up and tell us we're just going to go in there and use that government power better than anybody's ever used it, and we're just going to solve every problem in America, and so forth and so on. We've been told this now decade after decade, and guess what? The bills get larger and the problems get worse.
Well, as a matter of fact, when we were in Washington in that October of 1990, up on the Hill, they were voting on what was a tax increase, and the president has taken a lot of heat for that. Part of the deal was he agreed to the tax increase if they would cut the spending. Have they cut the spending?
Not at all. A matter of fact, for every dollar they took in new taxes, I believe the last estimates I saw, they spent about, $2.25, something like that, which is a great way to reduce the deficit. You see, you take in $1, you spend $2.25, and the deficit comes down by, well, as you can see, their arithmetic's not very good. You actually get enormous increase. That's why we've had record deficits, highest in the history of the country, since that awful sham deficit reduction package was passed. And I think that single effort, and I, by the way, was a columnist at the time, as you know, and wrote in my column that I thought this would be very seriously damaging to the president. I blamed at the time Dick Darman and others who led him down that garden path. I said it was going to hurt politically because, in a sense, it pulled the rug out from under the most important position of the Republican Party as the defender of the working middle-class people of this country who are, after all, the folks who struggle to put it together, raise the families, and support the government. And in a way, they felt abandoned. And I think what he needs to make clear right now is that, okay, he made a mistake, and his mistake was in accepting a policy foisted off on him by the Congress, trusting that they would keep their word. And, of course, he was betrayed. And so was this country, and we need to make that clear.
Now, if he can make that clear, as you have just stated, if he could say it just the way you did, I think he'd go a long way towards re-election.
I think he would. You know, it's hard, though. It's hard for people sometimes to realize, but I hope that he will have the kind of faith in the American people that I guess I feel in my heart. You can make a mistake, especially if it's motivated by the intention to do some good. And if you turn around to the people of this country, look them right in the eye and say, okay, forgive me. You know, I went wrong on that one. But I went wrong with good intentions because I thought this Congress was serious about doing something, and they're not. So what we need to do now is change the Congress. I think people can understand it. It's pretty simple logic. But that first step of admitting the error and looking people in the eye and saying, okay, forgive me, I think it's going to be needed. It's eating a bit of humble pie, but that's how you, I think, can be exalted once again by the people because they need a defender of their interests. And I think that George Bush has it in him to be that defender, and if he's determined to, they'll reelect him.
I want to quote a portion of your speech, which was given on the 17th, given on Monday, quoting Alan Keyes. Our president knows that we have a tremendous opportunity to reach out to groups that have not traditionally supported the Republican Party. That was one of his objectives when he signed the Civil Rights Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, outlawing discrimination against individuals based on race, gender, or disability. That brings me to this point. Alan Keyes, you have been a black American conservative before it was remotely fashionable for a black American to be publicly conservative.
That's true, but I think as you've noticed, and I think President Bush contributed to this trend when he appointed Clarence Thomas, and people finally started to wake up to the diversity of viewpoints that exists in the black community. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity now for the Republican Party, for conservatives to reach out. Polls are now showing, for instance, that about a third of the people in the black community think of themselves as conservative. And that ought to tell you something. But sometimes, even though you have the right ideas, people are suspicious because they feel like maybe you don't have the right attitude.
Yeah.
And I think we need to overcome that suspicion by making it clear that the Republican Party, that folks who are conservative really want the support of people from all groups, including African Americans, will reach out for it, will work for it, aren't writing anybody off. That's the point I was trying to make in my speech, because I think it would be a historic error having opened the minds of folks to these new possibilities to just leave them there, especially when it's quite clear that to an extent this year the Democrats are abandoning people. They're essentially taking for granted certain groups while they go after the votes they've been losing because of their awful economic policies and other things. Well, I don't think that we should watch them uncovering part of their base and leave it there.
Yeah.
Let's go after it, because people are ready to listen to solutions that work. They don't want all this talk of more bureaucracy and big spending that hasn't produced results. What they're interested in is programs and policies that will produce change and that aren't going to destroy this country's economy, because that robs us all of opportunity, the poorest of us as well as those who are better off. So I think it's a great opportunity for the Republican Party, and I guess I've been stirring up a little controversy by pushing with a view to opening eyes. You know, you've got to open eyes, and we don't have to change our policies. I haven't one iota stepped back from what I believe is the conservatism that's good for this country, but I think the common sense of it now has tremendous appeal, and we can get out there and sell it to everybody.
You mentioned the Clarence Thomas nomination and confirmation. You know, there actually was a silver lining to that acrimonious session, or those sessions, and that was this. I had people say to me, you know, Bob, I didn't know there were so many black intellectuals out there. There were so many black conservatives out there. They saw these people coming up and testifying for Clarence Thomas and debating the Anita Hill contention. Did you get that reaction?
I surely did, and I think that it was best proof that the black conservative has been the best example of what Ralph Ellison called the invisible man. And I think a lot of folks, even though it's in the liberal media and so forth and so on, essentially, when a black conservative walks into the room, they look the other way.
Yeah.
And have, for years, they didn't want to even acknowledge the existence or legitimacy of such viewpoints. That's changing now. It's still a struggle, and sometimes it's even a struggle to get the folks who are on your side to kind of put you out there where folks can take a look and see the differences. But it's essential, and I think the message is now out there walking on its own legs, that nobody has a monopoly on the minds or hearts of any group in this country. That what people are looking for is people who'll talk straight, who'll talk sense, and who'll get out there and work to produce results. And all the rest of the smoke and mirrors is no longer, I think, winning any automatic allegiance from any group.
Alan Keyes, senatorial candidate, state of Maryland, who spoke here at the National Convention, Republican National Convention, and who will be campaigning very effectively, I'm sure, for George Bush. Right now, let's say hello to Dave, who's calling in from Westchester. Hello, Dave. Are you there, Dave?
Yes, hi, Bob.
Yes.
Is Mr. Keyes still with you?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Mr. Keyes. I have a question for you, prefaced with a comment. Although I was disturbed a little bit by the stridency of the pro-life plank of the platform, I find the real hypocrites to be the Democrats, because they claim to be pro-choice, but that's only pro-choice up until the child is born. And then once the child is born, the parent should no longer have any choice in how to raise the child. And when an example is Hillary Clinton's view that normal parent-child disputes should be litigated. But another Republican concept, I wonder what your personal view on this, I think it's a good concept, and that is the concept of vouchers, so that a parent can have the choice of either a public school or to use a voucher for a private school education. And what's your view on that?
Well, I strongly support what they call educational choice, which is a program to empower people through vouchers or other means, but vouchers seem to be the most direct way, to put into the hands of parents a choice about where they're going to send their kids to school. The kind of choice that has up to now been reserved to the wealthy, who can choose amongst various alternatives, whether it's in the public school system or the private schools. And I think that we should try to open that alternative up so that others will be involved. And it's not with a view, by the way, and I say this very strongly, to destroying the public schools. Unlike some people, for instance, I keep my kids in the public schools in Maryland, and I believe in the public school system and in public education. But I also think that competition does everybody good. It means that you're going to improve in your attitude toward your clients. You're going to involve parents more in the process of education. You're going to create a greater community base of support for that educational process than you'll get if you think, well, this is the prerogative of educators and educational bureaucrats and you people stay out of it. Well, the kind of attitude you often get now in a system where folks who are part of that public education bureaucracy think they have a monopoly on the process. So I strongly support empowering parents in this way, and I think that it will strengthen the public school system in the end.
All right, thank you very much, Dave. I keep wanting to call you Senator because I know that someday I'm going to be calling you Senator, but Alan Keyes, you are pro-life, aren't
I'm
you?
pro-life, that's right.
All right, let's say hello to Mike, checking in from Long Island.
Hey, how you doing, Bob? How you doing, Alan?
Hi, how are you?
I'm a pro-choice Republican conservative. Okay, I'll just start. I'm an American. I don't divide myself at all. I wanted to just say I do not think in any way that this economy got this way by an accident. I want to talk about the Democratic media conspiracy. Since 1988, every time you turned on the news in 1988 and 1989, they had some economist saying how the economy was going to hit a depression, a recession, interest rates were going to go sky high. They were scaring people. All through 1989, every time I turned on the news, the economy was in perfect condition, 88, 89, ever since Reagan and Bush took over. All of a sudden, the news started saying we're going to hit recession. Here's Mike Donald. He wrote a book on the Great Depression that's going to be coming up. Every 5 minutes on the news, there was something that's saying that this economy is phony, that we're going to hit rock bottom. I want to know what you thought about that, because I think the media is part responsible as well as the Democratic Congress.
Well, I think that you're absolutely right. Though we do have to ask ourselves, they started that stuff, by the way, the gloom and doom talk and everything's going to hell in a handbasket and so forth. They started it right after the tax cuts were passed in 1982. And after the economy took off, they would periodically, every 6 months or so, predict the end of the expansion and that right around the corner was some terrible recession and crash and awfulness and so forth. And the thing that is most amusing is that talk even survived the stock market crash. In other words, the expansion survived the stock market crash, where everybody said, okay, it's coming now, and so forth, and it didn't come down the pike. And I think you're absolutely right about the efforts that were made by media pundits to scare people to death and to make believe that prosperity didn't exist when it did, and that if it did, it was all phony, and right around the corner was the crash. And guess when the crash came? And the slowdown and the recession and the bad times, when they started moving toward tax increases. When they reversed the policies of the 1980s, moved toward the tax increases, slapped the economy with those blows, and then things started to dive into the toilet. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. So you're absolutely right. That combination of media gloom and doom and bad return to tax increases and that kind of policy. I think that's what pushed this economy back over the brink of recession, and we need to get our senses back and get back with what worked. And what worked was putting money and power back in the hands of our people through tax cuts and through our reliance on the private sector mechanisms of job creation and economic expansion. And I know people are decrying that as the era of greed and all. Isn't it funny? When the government takes all your money, that's justice. When you get to keep it, that's greed. That's very strange reasoning.
Okay, we're going to continue with Alan Keyes right here on WABC. We're broadcasting, as you know, live and direct from the Astrodome in Houston, Texas, site of the 1992 Republican National Convention. Alan Keyes is with us, and George is also with us via the telephones, calling from New York City. I trust you're there, George.
Hello, Bob. Hello, Alan.
Hi.
Alan, here in New York City, we have a national debt meter.
Mm-hmm.
It's a meter that keeps right up with the national debt.
Yeah.
And on August 2nd, it passed $4 trillion.
Yes, indeed.
And before the next president is going to be inaugurated in January, it's going to go up another $200 billion.
That's right.
And before next year is over, it'll be close to $5 trillion.
That's right.
Now, Alan, I feel that before they can get a handle on it, it will hit $6 trillion.
Oh, boy.
Well, I think they better get a handle on it very quickly. I mean, it's already eating up something like 56 cents for every tax dollar we pay. And by the time you reach the year 2000, if it continues, it'll be $1.02, I believe, for every tax dollar we pay, so that all of our individual income taxes will just be servicing the interest on the national debt. Think about that.
Well, Alan, I've given it considerable thought, and I don't see any proposal from Mr. Bush to... He's proposed a balanced budget amendment, but to have a balanced budget amendment, you would have to raise taxes by 1/3.
You can't do it.
Well,
See, I think that any balanced budget amendment would have to include the language Bob Caston proposed, making it very difficult to balance the budget on the backs of the taxpayer, because you can't do it. You kill the economy, and you're chasing your own tail in a downward spiral, because as you increase the taxes, the economic activity slumps, and your revenues go down, and then the deficit increases, and you increase taxes again, and the economic activity further declines, and so forth and so on, until you really hit rock bottom. You cannot deal with the deficit problem through higher taxes, because you kill economic activity.
Well, Bob, what is your proposal for dealing with the national debt and the deficit? What would you do?
First, there was a fellow when I was in the Foreign Service. He used to ask us the question, if you find that you've dug a hole for yourself, what's the first thing you should do? And people usually pause and think and so forth and so on. He looked back at us and he said, stop digging.
Exactly.
It's a very good idea. So the first thing that you've got to do is stop adding to it. And that means you got to put the federal government on a diet. And that put it on a diet means you give it thus much and no more. And I think that the only way we can do that is to basically, I'm in favor, for instance, of a 19% cap, as they call it. The federal government can get 19% of the GNP in the form of taxes or borrowing, and that's it. And then you got to live within your means. Live on a budget instead of just making up a budget that's like a Christmas tree. Second, you've got to go after government waste, which explicitly accounts for $200 billion a year at least, according to the Comptroller General, probably more. And then you've got to put your priorities in order so that you have taken steps to break up this pork barrel patronage game that has everybody putting their fingers in the pie for more money to service their patronage organizations, regardless of the bottom line. And I think with that kind of discipline introduced, you would force the government to curtail its appetite for our tax dollars by curtailing wasteful spending. But taxes, they will never balance the budget through taxation, and the 1990 budget deal proves it.
All right, I want to thank you, George, Dave, Mike, everybody who participated, and of course, most of all, I want to thank Alan Keyes for stopping in. You are certainly in demand for good reason for interviews, and I think we are giving you enough time to get over there to that television booth that I see halfway across the hall there.
Good. Thank you, Bob, and it's always a pleasure to be with you.
Good luck to you, Alan Keyes, and I do hope that before the year is out, I'll be addressing you as Senator-elect Alan Keyes from the state of Maryland. On WABC, Bob Grant with you, and we've got many more people to talk to, of course, broadcasting today's program and tomorrow's program right here from the site of the 1992 Republican National Convention. We're going to let you go because The former President of the United States of America is here, and I have great respect for him, and I'd rather talk to him anyway. So, thank you, Mr. Perot.
Thank you.
Mr. President, so nice of you to come in. You were magnificent down in Houston. I was there, you know.
Well, I'm speechless. The only thing I can say, and the only thing I have time to say, if I'm not going to be sued, is thank you and God bless you.
You were just great. I saw your son Ron last night with Larry King. Larry King. And,
well, it was fitting that he would be on with Larry King, and you will concede to me that his performance with Larry, old fish face, was a lot more strident, a lot more vigorous than was Jeb Bush, who caved into Larry King in a way that I think was deplorable.
Oh, I didn't see Jeb. Tell me about it.
Well, I saw Jeb Bush in some French cheesecloth, probably just getting out of a bathhouse in Paris, if you know what I mean, pal. By the way, how do you like my impersonation of you?
You impersonating me, Mr. President?
Well, now, this Frenchman called Jeb Bush and said, I'll have to reproduce him.
Why is it the Americans are always prepared for war, but they are never prepared for helping their own people in a disaster?
And Jeb Bush said, well, we've done the best we could. He neglected to say that we are not always prepared for war, that we try to be prepared to defend ourselves, and that once before we were caught with our pants down, and it's lucky for him that we rallied because of the indomitable American spirit during World War II, and were able for the second time this century to march up the Champs-Élysées and save their French bacon.
Mr. President, I know you have to go, and I appreciate the fact that you stopped in. It's always a pleasure to see you.
And by the way, you might have imagined that Larry King didn't rise for one word of defense of the United States.
Well, I'm not surprised.
Oh, I didn't think you would be.
Now, he's come out with another book, and he is going to be a guest on this program. I understand he's being booked for a guest shot here. Maybe you might want to come in and join in the questioning.
Well, Bob, it would be a privilege. It is always a privilege to share the microphone with you. Good night, and God bless you, and God bless the United States.
All right, there he goes, the former President of the United States. Boy, he is looking just absolutely great.
Touch on a few points and then ask you a question, if I could.
Yeah.
Under Bush, federal spending has increased drastically, more than any other president domestically. The number of federal employees has gone up dramatically under his administration, and federal regulation has mushroomed, not to mention the whole civil rights bill fiasco. He funneled nuclear technology to Iraq, grain credits that they bartered to the Russians for weapons, and basically paid off Syria with Lebanon for the war. How could you, as a good conservative, defend this guy?
I can defend him because I have a choice: either to retain George Bush, or to vote for a sleazebag that I couldn't trust. Given that choice, it's very easy. I'll vote for George Bush. Thank you.
Okay.
Mitchell, you're on WABC. Hello.
Good afternoon, Bob. I wanted to give I hope is a slightly different slant on the presidential election, and I want this to hopefully be nonpartisan, because I'm looking at a historical perspective, and I see a lot of parallels between this election and the election that happened in Great Britain in 1945. You had Winston Churchill for the Conservatives and Clement Attlee for the Labour Party, and of course Winston Churchill was a strong conservative, led England and helped the Allies through a turbulent period.
Yeah, we've heard this before, Mitch. What's your point here?
Well, the point is that Attlee had advocated free medical and health care, numerous relief programs, and nationalizing public utilities and industries. Seems to coincide a little bit with what the Democrats are saying. The Republicans are against the protectionism and interference in business. And you have, in 1945, Britain's military role had become secondary, and the people had demanded a lot of post-war social change, which they felt Churchill did not appreciate. Now, if you go by the recent polls, It's showing that while Bush is considered much stronger in international affairs than Clinton, international affairs is taking a distant back seat to domestic problems.
Yes.
You have Clement Attlee defeating Churchill by a very large majority.
That's true.
Now, judging by the polls, it looks like Clinton will defeat Bush rather easily. Of course, we should note that after 6 years of the Labor Party...
Then Winston Churchill went back in 1953.
Right.
I was wondering whether you were going to point that out.
Oh, no, yeah, absolutely. They had a lot of...
And then he was followed by another, by Anthony Eden. He was followed by Harold Macmillan. And then Harold Wilson came in, and then since Harold Wilson, I believe the Conservatives have won with Margaret Thatcher 3 times and John Major. But what do you want me to say about all this? You want me?
No, I just think that the Republicans are revoking the Truman Dewey campaign, and they might be wise to look at what happened during that election to get a historical perspective on what could be.
Well, you can't. That's foolish too. It's okay to be aware of what's happened, but you can't say that the situation is a duplicate of 1945.
No, I wouldn't.
I want to point out something that the socialist government of Clement Attlee, and that's what it was a socialist government. They call it the Labor Party, but it was a socialist government.
They believed in a welfare state.
They imposed a total welfare state. Up until that time, Britain did not have a welfare state, and this was something that was considered new, and it was new. It was something that a lot of people thought was really going to be a panacea. And in due time, they realized there is no panacea. Thank you, Mitchell.
Thank you.
No, B is not there. I guess B got tired. Let's try Michael. Hello, Michael.
Yeah, hi, Bob. How are you?
What's on your mind, Michael?
Okay, well, I had 2 things on my mind, but I'm going to just talk about the important one now. I don't think we have enough time. The important one is, as we're talking about President Bush and re-electing him, which I believe he will be re-elected, we need a Republican Congress to go along with President Bush. The reason we do, we have a man here that has vetoed 32 bills put in front of him by the Democrats. Not one of those bills where they have enough votes to override them were ever overridden. The reason? Because they knew they were trash. But at the same time, unfortunately for the president, who has proposed many decent economic growth programs for the last 3 years, in front of this Congress to make the country move, they purposely stalled them, never went with the president. That's why there are so many Americans out of work today. These are some of the problems that the nation is facing, and that's what we need. We need to have a man in there and have a Republican Congress to go along with him.
Well, you seem to understand the problem. You seem to understand the situation. And I say this to anybody who would take issue with you. Since the House of Representatives stands for re-election every 2 years, if what you're saying doesn't show that it has efficacy, in 2 years, they can change the thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, but at least give a president. We've had a Democratic Congress, I don't know how many years running. Ronald Reagan, God bless him, from 84 to 86, at least had a Republican Senate for 2 years. Okay,
Yeah.
In 86 election, that changed again.
That's right.
Okay, however, they just don't give us enough time to make this economy move and turn itself around. I'm one of the people that went through a serious recession, closed the business, and went into working for somebody else, but still as an entrepreneur, and staying out there and trying and hustling. And I believe there are many more Americans like me, but we need a chance, and we have a Congress that works against us, that's willing to just tax us to death.
Mm-hmm.
And we need a president like George Bush.
All right, I thank you for the call, Michael.
Have a great show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Well, that slams the lid on things for today. Tomorrow, the best of Grant. That's right. And Monday, of course, Labor Day. I will return at 3 o'clock on Tuesday. I know you'll be holding your breath until then. Until then, Bob Grant reminding you, your influence counts. Use it. ABC, New York. It's 7 o'clock.
Not only a draft dodger, he's a coward.
Well, I don't know if he's a coward.
You know, I keep hearing these people make excuses. Everybody was against it. Everybody was against the war. Was an unpopular. That's a lot of baloney. Everybody wasn't against the war. It became unpopular when that scumbag that was down in Washington, Lyndon Johnson, was trying to run the war from Washington from the Hill. He thought he was a big general or something.
No, may I give you my opinion of it?
Yeah, okay.
There are a lot of people who say they were against the war who really weren't. At the time, they thought it was the right thing. At the time, they believed Lyndon Johnson's fraud, that the Sea Turner Joy and the Maddox, two destroyers, were attacked in the Tonkin Gulf. That was a phony deal. There was no attack on the Sea Turner Joy. There was no attack on the USS Maddox. That was a phony deal. And a lot of us, and I include myself, got sucked into believing it, and we supported the war at that time because we were fooled. What I'm sick and tired of, Joe, are a lot of people nowadays who act as though they were against it. There were more people at one time who were for it. In the United States Senate, there were only a couple of guys, Ernest Greening of Alaska. I don't even think Fulbright voted against the Tonkin Gulf resolution. There were just a couple of guys in the United States Senate, Wayne Morse of Oregon, who voted against it. Everybody else voted for it because they believed the biggest fraud ever to sit in the Oval Office, Lyndon Baines Johnson. And I want to tell you right here and now that I was for it, and it wasn't until till later that I opposed it. I remember when Barry Goldwater said, look, what the heck are we doing over there? If we're over there to fight a war, then let's win the damn thing, get it over with. If we're not over there to fight a war, let's get our boys out and take them home. And they called him a warmonger.
And you know, that's how most people felt at that time. If we were going to be there, we should win.
Well, but a lot of people, what you're overlooking, Joe, is a lot of people thought we should be there. They thought if we weren't there, Ho Chi Minh miraculously would be invading San Francisco, San Diego, and Los Angeles. You know, hey, I'm the only guy in America who says what I'm saying. Paul Harvey, for example. I remember Paul Harvey's broadcast. Back then, he was for the war. To hear him talk now, he was one of many who was against it. Come on. Thank you for the call.
That's what I'm fascinated about. I remember during that time, most people were for it.
That's right. That's right.
And then all of a sudden, nowadays, they're trying to rewrite history. Oh, everybody was against it.
Let me remind you of something else. A lot of people listen to Robert McNamara, the Secretary of Defense. He says, we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. What light? What tunnel? Okay, thank you for the call.
Mario, azendame. Tu sei bravemos fatim.
Very good. Steve, what you ought to do is get together with about 3 other guys, make a quartet, send in the tape. Your group might win the contest.
Oh, I was planning on doing my whole family. There's 10 of us in the immediate...
Good, the Steve. Hey, great.
Okay, now, I hope I'm correct on this. I'm not the greatest at Italian, but... Governor, duzina ganu de sfacima scustamad. Did I say that right?
Scustamad? Yeah.
Doesn't that mean that he is a skirt-chasing lowlife son of a bitch?
Scustamad? No, I don't know. By the way, I talked to a professor... an Italian, and I said, give me the translation of sfacim. He said, first of all, sfacim is not an out-and-out Italian word. It's a Napolitan dialect. It's Neapolitan dialect. He says, but people all over Italy know of the word. I said, okay, fine. Now, give me a translation. He said, there is no literal translation. I said, what does it mean? He says, guess what? It's like jerk in English.
Yeah, right.
You know, a jerk. What is a jerk? You know?
Yeah,
is a jerk, can you define a jerk? We call somebody a jerk when we get annoyed with them, but what does it actually mean?
Exactly.
Okay.
Bob, thanks a lot.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
So, sfacim is not really a naughty word for those of you who might have oohed and awed. Mostly it's the old-timers who thought it was a naughty word. The same people who, if you say vrajol, they laugh. Pedro, checking in from Newark. Hello, Pedro.
Yeah, Bob. Hi, how you doing? I just wanted to say that I'm very upset with the fact that the community has to turn against the police officers every time they try to reprehend the crime out there. I live in Newark for like 10, 15 years, and I have to be watching out for my car every night. You know, and it's ridiculous. And every time that a black person or either like right now it's happening in New York City, this Dominicans, they put the, you know, it's like you can't park your car any place. You know, you walk out and you have to make sure that your car is going to be, you know, you have to carry with a gun to shoot every gabon, like you said all the time on the radio.
Do you carry a gun, Pedro?
No, I don't. But Bob, I hope you understand. I'm just trying to, you know, say that you can't live in peace because, you know.
Yeah, I know. You live in Newark?
I live in Newark for 11 years, Bob.
Oh boy.
And it's hard to, you know, it's hard to see that every time that the police officers were we locked up behind doors sleeping and trying to, you know, get ready for the next day.
Yeah.
The police is doing the job out there, and all these Gabon gagasaurs, like you say, they're all, you know, stealing and breaking into people's houses, you know.
Yeah. Well, I understand what you're saying, Pedro. It's a real jungle. Thank you for the call, Pedro.
Thank you, Bob.
Let's say hello to Mike checking in right now, calling from his automobile.
I'm sorry. Good evening, Mr. Grant.
Yes, Mike.
I just wanted to give you a call on the latest comment from Governor Clinton regarding his flip-flopping on the deal with the draft. He commented that
the addict, who is the problem. No one is giving him a different way of purchasing drugs. The only way he knows how to purchase drugs is by gunpoint. And that's the greatest problem we all have.
Well, you know, you're assuming that a lot of these druggies are people who can't afford them and are robbing in order to buy their drugs. I have to tell you this. There are a lot of people taking drugs who earn enough money that they don't have to rob.
Well, those people we're not concerned about.